Okay, we're live.
So,
Oh, we don't have to start now. We're gonna start.
oh, there we go.
Everybody's getting into the show.
Happy.
Woo! Hey, everybody. I hope you're just like here because you're just like, I don't want to watch that shit show of a debate, or maybe you're like, you know what? I'm gonna find out all the highlights after the fact, or maybe you're just like, I just love In Poor Taste so much, I can't miss a single episode, which is how we feel.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you're here, if you've stumbled upon us, welcome. We are In Poor Taste, an irreverent guide to drinking wine. Kate, maybe you tell us a little bit more about what our goal is, what our mission is, why we come here every week.
Yeah, so we come here every week without fail, even when we have a conflict of presidential debates, because this is what is giving us joy these days. If you saw my Instagram post earlier, it was like, what is bringing you joy during these crazy times? And it's not because we hate politics, it's just because we love each other so much. So we are here to bring each other joy and to drink wine together and to connect, because in a time where we have a lot of division in the world in general, I want some connection in my life. So Britt, thanks for connecting with me. Thanks for being here.
Yes. I'm here for it.
And for the wine. The wine helps.
I'm here for it. I mean, I'm here for the wine and I'm here for my best friend. So I'm here for it all. Anyway,
your flower crown.
I thank you. I did this 5 minutes ago. I'm so proud of myself. I just sometimes you just have to really get into the theme.
Yeah, I like it. I also think it's funny that we both wore just like black and white flowers.
Mine's navy.
Okay,
and is yours black or is yours navy?
It's black.
Okay, yeah. But yes, I had other ones, but these ones were just so cute and little, and so I went with it.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, maybe the crown gave it away. Maybe our wardrobe gave it away. But what we are talking about today is floral wines. Woo! We're so excited to talk about floral wines and what it means to be drinking a floral wine, and really like how you can really, what it means to be like why you smell things in your wines and what that is coming from. So that's kind of what this episode is about. So please open up your bottles, get drinking. Caitlin is going to give us a lovely display. But before we do that, I really would love to hear from you in the comments what you're drinking and kind of like what you're tasting, as well as any questions throughout the episode. We love interacting with you. It's one of our favorite parts, and we'd love to hear from you. So don't be shy. And also, if throughout the episode we do something wrong, remember it or even tell it in the comments and we will address it later.
Yeah. And also, if you're not watching live, you can still comment, because we will answer your comments later if you are, doing your civic duty.
Yeah. So on top of the comments, mainly Caitlin. I'm on top of the comments in the episode. Caitlin is on top of the comments after the episode. I feel like I just sit there and read comments in case you ever see me chuckling for no good reason. It's usually because I'm just reading comments as they come in. But Caitlin is like the queen of doing comments after the episode, I feel like on our Facebook page. Caitlin, you manage that way more than I do.
I try. Okay, so I haven't opened my wine yet, and the reason is because my wine this week has a wax top. So just in case you need to be able to see it. And I figured if anyone else has wax top wine like mine, I'll give you a couple tips on how to open it. I used to use the knife on the wine opener and cut around it and try to get all the wax off and dig in. And then I feel like, embarrassingly enough, it was a year ago or something that someone was like, oh yeah, you just go straight through the wax. So that's what you do. You just go straight through the wax. So if you ever have a wax top and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I open this wax top? You might need a little extra muscle in there to get through that wax, but then you just go straight through it and it's going to open really, really nicely, hopefully. Don't want to jinx myself too much, but then it just kind of crumbles off. It's kind of hard to see, but look at that. The wax is
my God, look at that. Sometimes if I want to make it like a little easier, I'll like use my hand and I'll warm up the wax. Oh my gosh, that came off. That never comes off for me. It's just
I know.
I'll warm up the wax with my hand so that I can easily open it. It makes a little muscle.
Oh, but you still go straight through.
Oh, I'll still go straight through, but I warm it up so that it comes out. Like sometimes if you go straight through, look at that. Depending on the wax, like wax from Jura, man, that wax is like notorious for just like crumbling. It's like the worst fucking wax. I swear to you, they pay one wax maker in that whole goddamn town to do all the waxing of every single bottle. But anyway, and he decides to choose the worst wax ever.
That is the nerdiest thing you have maybe ever said on this entire show.
Okay.
Nerd credentials.
When you work at a restaurant and you're like opening bottles tableside, you really notice the bottles that are real shit to open. That is a lovely color. Can I tell you? Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh. I am like jealous that I'm not drinking that wine.
I know this wine is going to be strange. I'm excited. I haven't had it yet, so I'm excited to drink about it, but I was reading about it.
What are you drinking? Why don't you tell us then? Well, since we're there, buzzer, what are we buzzing about? Jura is a region in France that is right across from Burgundy. So I'm going to tell you one weird thing called a graben. Maybe you've heard of a graben, but a graben is like a land structure that like basically kind of like a souffle. So when the tectonic plates hit, it caused this like eruption of land where it rose up, but then it, like a souffle, the center fell down, or like not how you don't want a souffle to happen. The center fell, and so then you imagine it's like a little valley, like a tube almost. And what's really cool is Burgundy is very similar in like soil type to Jura because that's right across the Graben. And so a lot of really well-known wine producers are making stuff out of Jura at a lower price because nobody can buy land in Burgundy anymore. And Jura is a region that is my favorite wines are coming out of the Jura. And I love Jura wine. So that is Jura. And
we should do an episode on that.
Wax. What'd you say?
We should do a whole episode on that.
We should. And I'll stop talking so that it can go into our later episode. But yeah. That's what the buzzer was about. I mean, Logan said buzzer. Logan Strook said buzzer, and I had to like give myself a buzzer. I'll explain what I was talking about. But anyway, that's really shitty wax there.
Okay, well, it's weird. Like some people use wax. It's totally personal preference too, by the way, in case you're wondering why some bottles have wax and some don't. But just a little tidbit. That's how you open a bottle with a wax tip. All right, so you want to hear what I'm drinking?
Just the tip? Yes,
yep,
I would love to hear what you're
Okay, so this is called Rivera del Notro. It's 2018. Oh, mine's 2017, actually. Just kidding. I wrote down 2018, but 2017. And it's a white blend of 3 grapes, Muscat de Alexandria, or I think on the bottle it calls it Muscatel, Semillon, and Corinto, which I had never heard of Corinto.
I never heard of that either. Maybe we could pull up a picture of the bottle.
What
was the last grape? I didn't...
Corinto with a C, and you can see it on this picture that comes up on the left-hand side. Like the 3 grapes are listed there: Muscatel, Corinto, and Semillon. And I looked up Corinto to try to find out a little bit more about it. Muscatel is mostly used for dessert wines, like Muscat. For sweet wines, this is not a sweet wine, however. And Semillon is also often used for sweet wines.
Yeah, so I've heard like right? That's like one of the most famous sweet wines.
Yep.
Is that? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, you're right. And then Corinto, I had never heard of, but when I looked it up a little bit, it was, there wasn't much, but it was saying that it's maybe similar to the Spanish Pedro Jimenez grape.
Ooh.
But don't quote me on that because it wasn't very conclusive. But anyway, this is a blend of those 3, and all of those are, from what I understand, often made as sweet wines, which this is not. So it's interesting to get a dry expression of this. And also, so this winemaker, this is from Chile. It's from the Itata Valley in Chile, which also, from what I understand about that area in Chile, it's kind of an up and coming, like lots of new, like natural winemakers, a lot of people experimenting with things in that area. So I think someone even called it like the hipster part of winemaking in Chile. I feel like that was Lauren from Copafina. I feel like she mentioned that it was a new area that people are watching a lot. Okay.
It's so funny. You say Itata. which makes me like, I think of tatas. I don't know if anyone you've ever heard. Yes, exactly. Tatas. And then it made me think of the Tetons, which literally mean the tits. And so like maybe like the Tata valleys, like one Tata, here, two Tatas, there's the valley in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, I should make sure. I don't know if it's
It probably, I'm sure
It is a
it's
valley,
lost
yeah.
in translation. That's not something that is really discussed.
I mean, we can call it the Titty Valley if you want.
Great.
So, okay, when I was reading about this winemaker, he is really interested in making things with like basically the lowest intervention, kind of going back to old farming techniques from the area. A lot of people are not using those anymore, and he was wanting to kind of bring those back. So he doesn't fine or filter his wine, which means like it might have sediment, it might have some cloudiness. He also doesn't temperature control it, which my understanding of that is that it means occasionally if you're chilling a wine or something, you might get some of those like, crystallized things on the inside. I forget what they're called. I keep wanting to say amino acids, but they're not. Or maybe they are.
Acid.
Tartaric. Thank you. So you may get some tartaric acid crystals. One time when I was working at a restaurant, or I was like working with a supper club, and we were talking about how to talk to customers about those things. And one of the women who I worked with, she said she just tells customers that if they get those in their glass, then they're really lucky because they got the unicorn sprinkles. And I always loved that. So you might get some unicorn sprinkles in your glass. They're harmless. You can eat them. They're kind of tart and tasty.
I kind of like them. They're like a little crunch at the end. I'm like,
yeah, same.
Actually, it happens from not cold stabilizing. So like you were saying about how when you don't, typically like when you want to keep it at a certain temperature and stuff like that, and when it's like to make sure it doesn't like go one way, and also like you know, glycol jackets, they're something that wraps around tanks, and it's like a cooling system basically. And I mean, ancient wine never had that either. So like
exactly,
traditional methods don't, but then if you don't have it, it can give a lot of variability. Like Caitlin was saying, how sometimes her wine is, or sometimes that wine is very like one way and sometimes very another way.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of his philosophy, is keeping things like really kind of ancient farming and winemaking practices. And then the last thing I'll say, so there's no additives or anything. It's really low sulfite as well. The last thing I'll say, which will explain a little bit more about the color, is he's also a skin contact for reds and whites person. So this, I think he was probably making this initially as a white, but with the skin contact, it basically turned it into kind of an orange wine. And that's really neat because you get like the dryness of a white wine, but the body of a red. And we want to do a whole episode on orange wines. But if you're looking at this color and you're like, why is this color not really white? That is why. So it's great. I think it's getting better as it warms up a little too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, can we do tasting notes at the end? Like, I'll tell about my wine. Mine is so cold because I pulled it out, and especially like aromatic whites, if they're really cold, their aromas are not going to show up so much.
Happening here.
So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, what are you drinking?
I am drinking. It's called Union Sacra. We have a picture of it, but it literally means meeting of two worlds. And it is a 2018 Gewürztraminer from the Central Coast of California. I love it. It's so funny. I feel like I keep saying this every time, but it's like, it's made by two best friends. It is made by two best friends from different continents, actually, who met each other in the Central Coast. They both came there. One of them, named Javier, is a WSET. He's WSET certified. He has an enology degree from France. And then the other one is named Philip, and he's a self-taught designer who misses living in his van from Michigan. So it is like literally me and you.
Wow.
I live in my van. And you're WSET certified. So, I mean, this wine could not be more perfect. And actually, one of our viewers today is drinking along with us because our episode today was a special giveaway. So we gave away the same bottle. So we're kind of drinking it together. So Whitney, shout out to Whitney. But also, when I do my tasting notes, you can call me out if I'm full of shit. And you're like, that is not what this tastes like. That's not what this smells like. So mine is also has a bit of skin contact as well. So it is not quite an orange
Let's
one.
get up.
But call it. Mine's much less than yours. Like,
but still.
Yeah, like it has almost like a copper. It's so funny. Like it has like a copper-like quality to it, which I always associate whenever I see that with Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio. That often when you like, it's a telltale sign when you're in a tasting, like if there's a copper hue to it, and so it kind of almost has a little bit of a pink quality. The 2000, so this is the 2018, and their 2019 looks almost rosé, and it can really vary from year to year based off of how ripe the grapes were and things like that. But the skin contact on this one, it was cold soaked for 30 hours. So even 30 hours is enough to really change the color, which for whites, you're like, oh, you don't even think like how long is like enough to change it. And they described this wine like a beautiful woman who you once met and then disappeared from your life. And they were talking about how Gewürztraminer can be a really hard grape to work with because it goes like not ripe, perfect, beautiful, and then overly sweet and everything. And so it can be like this balance. And so, yes, it's very lovely. I'm going to tell you what I'm tasting and what I'm smelling later in the episode when it warms up.
Perfect. I love it. I can't wait. Okay, so we have prepared a little bit more than just florals today because there's so much to wine aromas. So we're going to talk about kind of what wine aromas in the bouquet are. I'm going to talk to you about that. We're going to talk about some specific compounds that create those aromas. And then we're going to talk about which wines you find that have specifically floral notes. And then we're going to do kind of a little bit, or I think somewhere in there, I think I skipped a step, but we got some other good shit for you. So stay tuned.
The other thing is like basically how, like, you know, if you're writing your own wine notes, if you're reading other people's wine notes, what that looks like, what that means.
Demystifying the world of wine notes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm super excited. So when we talk about wine aromas, there are basically two main categories. And they are wine aromas on the left-hand side, and then the wine bouquet. And if you've heard people talk about, it's perfect because it's the floral episode, so we can talk about a bouquet.
I even have a bouquet that didn't fit into my.
Make it for me. Put it on my head.
I know. I wish they were here so I could make you a crown too.
Okay, and then within those two categories. Wine aromas, basically, I know this graphic is probably a little bit small. Maybe we can make it full screen for a second just to give people a chance to take it all in. So on the left-hand side,
take it all in, people.
Take it all in. When we talk about wine aromas, we are talking about the primary aromas. There's a term that people use a lot in the wine world, primary aromas, basically, is like, what are you most getting from this? And the key here is that wine aromas and primary aromas come from the actual qualities of the grapes. So that's really important to kind of distinguish. And then when we look at the right-hand side, when we talk about the bouquet, we refer to those as secondary and tertiary aromas. And those are actually qualities in the wine that are derived from the fermentation and aging process. So we've got those three components, the actual grapes, and then the fermentation and aging process, which combine to create what you get in the glass. So first of all, primary aromas, and you can leave this up because it's kind of, you can take it down.
I did it.
Either way, primary aromas are usually fruit aromas, flower aromas, and herb aromas. So I put that on the bottom of that graphic so you could see. Also, I got tons of my sources from Wine Folly, and this graphic is no exception. So if you're wondering why this graphic is so rad,
Wine Folly.
Yeah, I did not make it myself, unfortunately. But so anytime we're talking about fruit, flowers, or herbs, those are usually things that come directly from the grapes and from the soil, from the climate, from the grapes, kind of all of that combined to make those aromas. Contrary to maybe not popular belief, but some people believe that when a wine has certain aromas, it's because that is put into the wine, and that's not the case. It actually, Britt is going to talk, I think, a little bit more about the chemical compounds that create those aromas. So if I say that this wine, like I think this example that there is on the graphic here on the left is a Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's like, okay, there's cherries, there's there's supposed to be violets and maybe like rosemary or something. I don't know if rosemary is a good descriptor for cab, but basically that would be, if I was finding those things, those would be wine aromas or primary aromas. And then our second categories for the bouquet are the categories of the fermentation and the aging process. So the secondary bouquets are things that directly relate to the winemaking and fermentation process. So that has to do with how is the wine made in the winery, what things are added. Some of those aromas that people might get from the secondary aromas include things like yeast, spice, or nuts. And those can, like yeast, for instance, actually is because the yeast is used in the fermentation process. So those aromas kind of come through in that. Some common smells for secondary bouquets include cultured cream, butter, sourdough, aged cheese, beer, mushrooms, things like the descriptor that I read was grandma's cellar, but I was like, that's basically like a dank cellar. And I like
I love that you said dank cellar because I was thinking about dank stuff too. Like, but it's like that's dank.
Yeah. So I think dank is a better description than like grandma's cellar, because I'm like, grandma sounds like it smells like a grandma.
Well, the funny thing is, one time this person was talking to me about, I don't remember, something, and they're like, oh, that's dank. And I was like, isn't that bad? And they're like, Britt, you don't smoke weed, do you? And I'm like,
yeah,
no. And they're like, dank is good.
Dank is good.
I'm like, really? Because I've always associated with an old sweaty cellar.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I had, a very similar experience where I learned that dank was good when it related to weed, but the rest of the time, the word dank just doesn't come across with great. Does not inspire one with the aromas that come to mind. It
doesn't come across with like much fanfare.
Yeah. I remember when I was on this trip with some people at one point, like a big group of people, and I had to use the word dank to describe like the hotel we were staying in because it kind of did have like a lot of those qualities. And this one guy was like, dank, wow, that's a word that's really smart. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not that smart. But I was like, feel free to attribute.
Really dumb.
Yeah. I was like, okay, it's a 4-letter word. It's not like, anyway. So now we have
that commonly used.
I know this was a long time ago too. So I'll just say I was using dank before it was cool.
I was using dank before it was cool. I doubt it. I bet weed people were using it way before that.
Probably. Okay. So just a recap, primary flavors include things that you get from the actual grapes. That includes fruit, flowers, and herbs. Secondary aromas or bouquets are things that you get from the fermentation process itself. And then thirdly, the tertiary aromas, which is like the third ring of aromas, are things that you get from the aging process. And those usually relate to specifically either oxygen exposure or something like a oak, like something that you use, which also kind of is an oxygen exposure. So some things that you can smell from oxygen exposure are things like hazelnuts and peanuts, which I was like, interesting. And then from oak, you get things like vanilla, baking spices, coconut, cigar.
I have heard people talk about like debate on oak as a winemaking. So it's like, does it fit in secondary or does it fit in tertiary? And the same with yeast, specifically as it relates to champagne. Because as champagne ages on lees, which are the dead yeast cells, they pick up those biscuity brioche qualities. And so it's kind of like, well, is it a secondary? Is it from the winemaking process? Or is it a tertiary? Is it from the aging process? So those two are weird ones that can fit in both categories, which I think is kind of fun to think about. One thing that I was listening to today, what do you think? Do you think that faults, when you can smell a fault, what category does that fall in?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't think it's primary because I don't think that the grapes have it in themselves. So I would say probably wine making or aging. They could be either one, I guess.
It's even like corks. I mean, I guess cork it's not from the winemaking process, but it's something that you're introducing that you wouldn't have been introduced to the grape. But yes.
But
the person in the thing was just like, I don't think it really fits in a category, which it probably doesn't. I just wanted to pose you that question to see what you thought.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think that I would put that into both things. Some other things that are also faults were included under secondary aromas include things like Band-Aid, Wild Game. They say that has more to do with the Brettanomyces, which we've talked about on here before, which is a wine making decision or fault. But yeah, so basically no one's injecting your wines with different aromas. Some of them come from the grapes and some of them come from the wine making aging process. So that's my part.
You had like a cherry cola smell in your wine?
Yes.
What's that?
I don't know. I've smelled it. What is it? I want to say it's like Nebulos or something.
Some like different ones can have it. And I'm always like, someone injected cherry cola. I mean, they're not obviously, but
I never thought it was a fault. I just figured it was.
I don't think it's a fault at all. But I was just like, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what, like, Caitlin was like, Britt, that is the geekiest thing you've ever said when I was talking about Jura wax. Let's get even right now because I'm about to geek out on chemical compounds. And I'm going to have to look at my notes a lot in this because a lot of these words I cannot even like say on my own. So we're going to go for it.
I saw them like in the app when I was researching too. And I was like, I'm so glad Britt has this section.
Yeah. Well, I love one thing that I was reading about like the science of smell. And okay, so grape juice just smells like grape juice. It doesn't smell like all these things that Caitlin described and all these other things that I'm going to describe. And so why is that? What's the difference? Yes.
I also think depending on what grape you're using for the grape juice.
This one smells grapey.
Yeah. Because there's so many different different types of grapes that can contribute. And I was reading about all the table grapes and those have so many different flavors. So, okay, all that to say, if you have like, white grape juice, red grape juice, whatever, you're going to get different aromas too. Okay, take it away. Sorry.
You are. But what happens is basically the sugars hold on to those aromas. And it's not till it goes through that fermentation process that the sugars turn into alcohol that those aromas are released. And we're able to smell all these different things when people say they smell things. And the Rockefeller University did a study in 2014 where they estimated that humans can detect more than 1 trillion smells, which is pretty incredible. But then you think about, okay, if I can detect over 1 trillion smells, why can't I describe it in my wine? And a lot of times it's because we don't take the time to think about it. We don't take the time to relate it to smells that we've smelled before. And so this, like, I hope that what you take from this episode is like, hey, I'm going to take a little bit longer with my wine. I'm going to think about it and I'm going to figure out like, what is it I'm smelling? And I think that that's what makes wine tasting so beautiful because it uses your mind a little bit. It's not like I'm just fucking chugging a cocktail. So let's talk about these chemical compounds that you are going to find in your wines and what smells they're going to give you. So
can I say something real fast?
Yes,
you can. But I don't care.
Start interrupting me.
On that same note, though, like I agree with you that wine tasting can be such like a romantic process because it's really about connecting with like your memories and your sensory like storage spaces. And that's what I think is so cool, where you're like a single thing that you smell can take you back to a place that you don't remember even like having experienced when you were a kid or something. And that's just like,
you know what's crazy? People always talk about how smells really have that ability. I've always thought that songs do. I don't know if you ever hear a song and you're like, oh my God, I remember that angsty moment in my childhood where this song meant so much to me. And like, I'm reliving it right now and stop playing this song right now.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah, you can change your relationship to songs, but I feel like you can't usually change your relationship to smells too much. So that's like why, like, I remember one time I was at the Alameda flea market and I walked into this booth and oh my God, it smelled like my great grandmother's house. And I just like stood there for like 5 minutes. I'm just like, just reliving that moment. And that's what wine can do. And I'm so excited to be drinking wine and talking about it. And okay, so let's talk about these chemical compounds. So I'm going to go through a few of them. I'm going to talk about what they are and I'm going to talk about what they're like. So terpenes terpenes is one of them, and that is the smell of rose petals and citrus. Now, this compound is found on grape skin. So remember how Caitlin and me both talked about how they left the grape skin a little bit longer in contact with the wine. And so by doing that, they're going to kind of have a little bit more of those smells coming out. You will see this often in Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Muscat. This terpenes are also, when someone describes something as garrigue, if you ever hear someone describe garrigue, you often find that in like wines from southern France. And garrigue is like kind of like the underbrush, like kind of like sagey smells and stuff like that, as well as eucalyptus that you find in Australian wines, and pepper. So those are all kind of terpenes. So if anyone ever talks about those, you know that those usually come from the grape skins. So the next one is esters. Now, esters is going to be the reactions between alcohol and acid. So it is responsible for primary fruit flavors. So Caitlin talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary. So kind of when that alcohol gets into starts reacting with the acid, those are flavors that you're going to see. And some of these flavors, those flavors often occur more in younger wines. So as the wine gets older, those notes get smaller and smaller. Those esters get less and less because other things are taking over. And the smells that you would get from that would be citrus, pears, apples, and bananas. And I have some fun stuff to talk about bananas later. I'm so excited to talk about bananas. Another smell that you might have in your wine is pyrazines. So pyrazine is a chemical compound that smells like green pepper. And that green pepper, like green bell peppers, yeah. I mean, so sometimes it's good.
Yeah, it's good. I just don't like peppers.
I know, yeah. But okay, so it's fine when it's a varietal compound. It comes from the variety of grape. And so you'll often see that in kind of Sauvignon, in the Sauvignon family. So Cab Franc is a big one, and Sauvignon Blanc and even Cabernet Sauvignon, those are all going to have those pyrazine qualities. But it can also occur in ones where it's not a natural occurring thing. And why that happens is because they're underripe. And so it's going to have those qualities. Or maybe they didn't do well with canopy management. So they left a lot of leaves on. And so by doing that, you're going to get these green peppers, bell pepper quality, even jalapeno, are notes that you would get in that. So those are pyrazines. So sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Depends on if you like peppers. I know lots of people who don't, Caitlin being one of them. Okay, the next one is aldehydes. So that is the smell of fresh cut grass, tomato leaf, or vanilla that you find in American oak, as well as bitter almond, marzipan, and caramel. So those can be from variety, but they can also be from the wood barrels. So it kind of, you don't know, even though they're all in the same family, you would never start relating them, I'll be honest. If I smelled caramel and I smelled grass in two different ones, I'd be like, oh my God, they're from the same, they must be similar. Okay, just because they have the same chemical compound in them does not compute. But anyway, that's another one. So then there are ketones and diketones, and those are violets and florals in red wine. So if you smell florals in red wine, so there's a difference between florals and white wine, and Caitlin's going to talk a little bit more about that later, and florals in white wine. So white wine florals tend to be more white flowers, honestly. Okay, I won't talk about it. But in red wine, it's violets.
You can talk about it.
I love smelling violets in my wine. Yes, please.
I'm not very good at picking up violets.
Oh my God. Let's start drinking some violet wine together. And, we could just go to the flower market with Paulina of Fig and Vine and just start smelling all the violets we can.
Yes. Get our hands on some violets.
Another one in that family of compounds is that butter smell. And like Caitlin talked about how that one is a secondary, it comes from when a wine goes through malolactic. So it goes from that green apple Yeah, exactly. And actually, flowers can be really hard for people to smell in wines. Like if like I have a hard time smelling them, and I smell a lot of wines. But some wines, like they'd really just burst at you, and you're just like, oh, that was easy to pick out. Malolactic, it goes from that green apple to that like lactic, that yogurty. But like if you've ever had butter that butter quality,
Did you just say if you've ever had butter?
If you've ever had butter, I was going to say that butter quality in your wine.
I'm just teasing.
California Chardonnay, you know what I'm talking about. So let's go just through a few more. I'm almost done.
You're doing great. I love it.
Bananas. What'd you say?
I said you're doing great. I love it.
Thanks. I just don't want to bore people because I'm like, okay, who wants to hear about these weird words? And they're like, okay, am I ever going to use this? Yeah. Peppers.
Can I just say, this guy, whoever this is.
It's my mother.
Okay.
My mother under her partner's name.
Okay.
I know my mother hates peppers.
Okay. Well, then your mother and I are like bosom buddies because
my mother literally goes to restaurants and tells people she's allergic to peppers. And I'm like, no, you're not. And she's like, I might as well be how much I hate them.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm like, somebody brought me a sandwich the other day and it just had like a tapenade that was peppers. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't eat this sandwich. Like I couldn't eat a bite of the sandwich. I was so grossed out. I was like, I might throw up if I eat this. Sorry, don't want to talk about that while
so I've gotten into that habit as well. Like taking one from my mother's book, taking a page from my mother's book. I hate shrimp. I don't know why. I just hate shrimp. It like has a weird chewiness to it that I don't love. And they're bottom feeders. It's like the cockroach of the sea. Let's be honest. But anyway, when I go to sushi places and whenever they ask, like I always get like the sashimi plate, I tell them that I'm allergic to shrimp. I'm just like, oh, I'm allergic to shrimp. So do not give me that stupid shrimp that nobody fucking wants in their sushi platter.
Yeah, I've been there with you before, I think, when you've done that. And I was like, you're allergic to shrimp?
That's Caitlin. I'm allergic to shrimp.
And I'm allergic to bell peppers.
Exactly. So yes, Caitlin, you're allergic to bell peppers. I'm allergic to shrimp. Let's keep it going.
Well, and I don't think that shrimp is a very common aroma in wine, but peppers are. And so it makes it very easy to pick up on them when you hate them so much. I'm like, peppers, oh, there's peppers in there. Because you can pick up on aromas that you love or aromas that you hate.
Okay, let's finish these. Let's go out with a bang. Maybe you've had a really great Sauvignon Blanc and you're just like, oh man, that passion fruit, that guava, that gooseberry, where's that coming from? It's coming from Mercaptans. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Mercapta. It's like Mercaptans. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Another one called lactones is another chemical compound. And that comes from the aging quality, like Caitlin talked about. So the nuts, the toast, the maple syrup, coconut, and curry spices. That all comes from, that's the compound. In case you're ever trying to relate it to what the compound is, you'll never, guys, I feel like I'm saying this shit and it's like going in one ear, going out the other, but that's okay. Don't worry. I just,
as it should.
I'm going to remember the banana one because that one's the most fun. So then this last one before I get to my lovely banana exciting stuff is phenols. So phenols is like, you'll hear that a lot. It comes from oak aging as well. And it has smoked, toast, roasted cloves. But then there's also phenolic bitterness. And I'm just going to talk about this off the cuff because I didn't write anything down. But that you find in white wines more. And it kind of has like a bitterness at the back of your tongue. And it can be with certain varieties that you would get that more often. Maybe Caitlin can talk to us a little bit about polyphenols, phenolic bitterness now.
I know, but I'm good at deflecting. I'm really good at deflecting. I want chemical equations to balance with all this compounds talk. I know, okay. It's a lot. Well, like this, having not prepped on this at all, I just feel like you get an actual sense of bitterness in your wine.
I find it more on whites than I find it on reds, but I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's funny because I think people generally have this idea that reds are drier than, drier than whites, but actually I feel like reds are usually a little bit sweeter than whites, and so they tend to mask a lot of that kind of bitterness. So yeah, I'm sure later I'll think of some wines that I specifically get that on, but off the top of my head, nothing's coming to mind. So
I would 100% agree with Karina Gaz. Pronouncing words right is 90% confidence, mainly because it's confidence in the fact that other people don't know you're pronouncing it wrong because you confidently pronounce it wrong.
Well, and also like I've taken tons of classes in wine from people who pronounce the same
Gosh,
differently.
Okay, so I took a class 2 nights ago on my French wine scholar, and I told you about the guy who was pronouncing it Viage instead of Village, which I've heard it pronounced Village, and then this guy pronounced it Viage, and then literally 2 nights ago we had like a substitute teacher in the class, and he pronounced it Village, and I was like, I see you.
It's so good.
Yeah, but then he pronounced this one word so weird to me. God, what was it? Oh, it was like Chalonnaise. And he pronounced it the weirdest fucking way ever.
Well, Britt, not everybody has 4 years of French in high school.
Oh, yeah, 4 years of high school French. But he added in like another like letters that weren't even in it. I'm like, okay, like I understand if you pronounce it different, but you're literally putting in letters that are not in this word. But okay, God, I wish I could remember how he pronounced it, because I was like, I'm looking around, even though I'm in my own house. I'm like, does anyone else notice the weirdest way that he was pronouncing it? So I'm not instilling 90% confidence in him, but I will instill it in myself right now as I pronounce this last one.
Yes. Okay. Tell us about bananas.
Yes, to talk about bananas. Isomol acetate. So this comes from carbonic maceration, and we've talked a little bit about carbonic maceration last week. If you didn't tune in, check out all of our past episodes on our Facebook page. But anyway, carbonic maceration is when the grapes are kept intact, and then they're like just left in this tank that's sealed with CO2, and the fermentation happens inside the berry. But when that happens, when carbonic maceration happens, oftentimes you'll get a banana-like quality to your wine. But it is an ester that is also found in bubble gum and pears. It's a like compound that is found in bubble gum and pears. Yes, tell me.
Yeah, that was what I was going to add, is that the primary flavor of bubble gum is banana.
Yeah.
When you look at the flavor profiles, banana's like, I think, one of the first ones. And I was so blown away.
And they always describe like carbonic maceration or Beaujolais as banana or bubblegummy. And I never notice banana flavor in my bubblegum. So that's why I'm like, what? But it's the same compound, which is insane to me. This compound can also come from yeast. So certain yeast will have more of a banana taste to it. And you'll notice that in beer. Like certain beers kind of have that banana quality, and it's coming from the yeast. But here's the most exciting part, and probably the only thing you're going to remember from my section. This compound that you find from carbonic maceration that gives you a banana scent is the same compound that honeybees release when they release their stinger to warn other bees in the area of danger. So
banana alert, bananas, banana
alert, bee alert. Here's the bananas. Get away from that stinger. Okay.
Oh, here, let's look at this. Did you know that banana flavor continues to change? Run's banana flavor is what it was 60 years ago, but not like it. Do you mean actual banana? Oh, flavoring. Oh my gosh. Banana runt candy is what I use for like my gamay tasting notes. Usually if I'm smelling like a carbonic thing and I get banana runt candy, I'm like, this is carbonic maceration. So
there you go.
Yeah, that's crazy. Flavors are so weird. If you think that it's just like an objective thing, it is not. Everything is changing.
Not objective. No. Like certain varieties have certain things, and it's because of science, dude. Like science is real. Hashtag science is real. And just because you think that your wine smells like that, science will tell you what it really smells like. Science can't pick it up, and that's okay. It's because banana trees went extinct. Is that true?
I don't know if that's true or not.
I would like fake news. Dakota Smith, please put a
Please cite your sources. No, I'm just
Cite your sources, please.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is just what wines you can find that have floral notes. So this is just kind of like a rapid fire section. I don't expect you to memorize this, but if you're a note taker, yeah, exactly. Pew, pew, pew. Okay. First of all, there are 6 primary floral flavors, primary ones. So you can find other florals. You know, whatever you smell in a wine, you're probably not wrong if you know the smell. But the first one, or one of them, is rose. There are some wines that have rose as a common descriptor for them, including Nebbiolo, which is like my Mary wine. Oh my gosh. I love
champagne, but you can have Nebbiolo. It's okay.
Nebbiolo, because you know what? I opened a bottle. It was 30 years old and it was so delicious. And I was like, damn, this shit gets just better with age. I can't wait to age with a Nebbiolo.
That's how I feel about champagne.
Champagne? I mean, can I have 2 husbands?
Well, if you get 2, I get 2. Okay, so it's like we'll have our mistress marriage.
Oh,
I'll take just like Riesling, and you can have Nebbiolo and champagne.
Okay, I was gonna say a good alternative is like we could just all hang out together, and I'm not talking like.
Oh, you're talking about swinging?
No, I wasn't. It's just like, you know what?
Okay, you want to be my sister wife? I got it.
I want you to bring your champagne to dinner, and I'll bring Nebbiolo to dinner, and then we'll just have a really kick-ass meal, you know?
Okay, we need a friend who's bringing Riesling to dinner.
Okay, so rose is a really common aroma on Nebbiolo, Pinot Noir, Gamay, which we talked about last week, and then Gewürztraminer, which is a white wine. So that one's like yours, Britt. Yours is a Gewürztraminer. Do you smell rose?
Not really, but that's
okay. Well, also rose, there's a bunch of different types of rose smells if we want to get real technical.
I know.
The type of rose.
I have a really hard time picking up smells in this one, which is bad. Because, oh my, like, is it okay? Yeah. So I'm just going to talk about COVID. No, we don't. I was actually thinking about the biodynamic calendar and how certain days you should be like smelling certain things. And today is probably not a flower day or a fruit day. You should always taste your wine on flower or fruit days, but never on root days and never on leaf days.
Yeah, well, and that also depends on how much you buy into the biodynamic calendar. So like,
I buy into it.
It's like a farmer's almanac sort of situation where like, I'm not saying
nature's almanac, I would say, more than the farmer's almanac.
So the biodynamic calendar basically separates out like days that are predominantly dedicated to, like she said, fruit or flowers or roots or different things. And some people make their wine by it.
You should like plant your wine or plant your vines, when you should prune them and things like that. And like when you should spray them. And when you spray them in the biodynamics, you do it with teas that are like chamomile teas and stuff like that, which is so funny. I imagine just people, I've actually been to a biodynamic farm and it was fabulous, but their teas were like these little chamomile and nettles that they steep and then they just like spray them. I was like, oh my gosh, can I live here?
Okay, so sorry, Lauren, I kind of jumped the gun, but yes, if you want to pull that graphic back up, rose, it's probably hard to see on here, but here's a whole list. I said Gewürztraminer, Gamay, Pinot Noir, Grenache, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo. Those are some wines that have a typical rose aroma. And then violets, which are, I maybe didn't put these in order.
I was about to say you went to geraniums, but
okay, let's go geranium. We'll stay there. Just stay there. It's good. You're all good, Lauren. You're doing awesome. Geranium. You're doing great. Geranium, actually, interestingly enough, first of all, I have no idea what a geranium smells like.
Really?
Yeah. Does it have a strong smell?
Yes, but I feel like their smell is, I smell their leaves more than I smell, like they smell very like vegetal to me whenever I smell them. Okay. And I always see that and I'm like, geraniums just smell like vegetal to me.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I feel like I've smelled these flowers and I'm like, I don't remember a floral smell, so maybe that's it. So, okay, interestingly enough, geranium can be considered a flaw because the compound, so going back to what Britt was talking about, the compound's actually not naturally occurring in grapes. So if you have a geranium smell, then it's very likely from some other part of the process and not from the actual grapes. But according to Wine Folly in this graphic, geraniums can be commonly found, the aromas in Moscato, which is kind of what Muscat I'm drinking here, Gewürztraminer, Torrontés, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. Okay, so let's go to the next graphic that I have. I have part 2 of this one. And we've got citrus blossoms. So citrus blossoms, a lot of times people will say, like, first of all, sometimes I'm like, what are these people talking about? Because they'll do a blind tasting and they'll be like, it's orange blossom, it's lemon blossom, it's lime blossom. And I'm like, do you know the difference between those? Because come on. They just categorize it as citrus blossom here. A lot of common ones for citrus blossom aromas are Riesling, Chenin Blanc, Viognier, and Chardonnay. I think those are the same ones that are on there. Yes. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's so cool because you could have aromas from like everything from the citrus blossom to the actual citrus, like lemon, orange, grapefruit, thyme, all the way through like macerated or like cooked citrus. So you could have like a lemon meringue pie, which is a different variation of that same lemon. It's like every process of this citrus can be an aroma, which is kind of neat to think about. Okay, so then we've got white flowers, which is also a very common tasting profile in lots of different white wines, specifically Pinot Gris, Chenin Blanc, Torrontés, Pinot Blanc, Muscadet, or I guess I'm like Muscat. That's a whole other discussion. Semillon, which is in here.
Muscadet is different.
What?
Muscadet is different.
I know. That's why I realized like like Muscadet, Muscat of Alexandria, Muscatel, and Moscato.
Come on.
Have a whole episode.
Let's not make this harder than it needs to be.
I know. So I was trying to like just skim over that. Thanks for pointing it out, Britt.
Oh, well, I was like, wait, am I wrong? Like, no, but whenever I'm always just like, have I been thinking this is wrong the whole time?
No, there's just like so many different things in the like family of aromatic Muscatel, Muscat grapes. Okay, then we've got lavender over there, which is oftentimes a red in red wines like Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, Tempranillo. So if you like any of those. And then lastly, we've got violet, which are common also in red wines, which are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Syrah, Malbec, and more. So to give you a clue, 2 things to say about this. 1, you can't smell something that you've never smelled in real life in your wine. So at least you won't have the right name for it. So if you're like, or honey, I mean, people say honeysuckle. Isn't that a flower too? Honeysuckle?
It is. Actually, I was going to say honeysuckle in my wine.
Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised honeysuckle's not on here because I hear that all the time.
Right? Well, I feel like you could kind of put it in citrus blossom maybe a little, or maybe more like white flowers. I would say it's somewhere in between those 2.
And I mean, it's one of those things where like, if you have never smelled, like for instance, I don't really know what a violet smells like very well. I know what violet smelling things are.
I know what violence smells like. I don't know what violet smells like, but I know what violence smells like.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to be very strong at picking up violet in my red wines because I don't really have a good sensory like bank, like a card catalog in my brain for that smell. But maybe there are certain things like mulberry, for instance. I know it's kind of, I guess it's a fruit, not a flower, but
I was going to say, yeah.
Mulberry. A lot of people are like, what the hell does mulberry smell like? Well, I happened to grow up on a house where I had a mulberry tree and I would climb in the tree and eat mulberries out of the tree. And I'd like bring a book and read and be real super nerdy. So I really know what mulberry smells like. But every other person might not know what mulberry smells like. So you're not going to find those.
It's interesting too, speaking of that. And I feel like this is kind of like talking about my last section. So great. We can kind of get to that. Kind of like, definitely based on where you are, your tasting notes are going to be different. Like gooseberries is something that's very English. Like you find that a lot in people from England, like have that in their tasting notes and things like that. So it's like, so if you're looking at how can I start identifying smells in wines, you need to, 1, start smelling like Caitlin was talking about, start smelling everything and thinking about it and taking some time with it. But 2, start in broad categories and then start narrowing it down. Like, okay, I don't need to, like, some people have the most beautiful tasting notes ever. And I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I were that good. Like literally I'm like, yep, smells like that, smells like that, smells like that. And then, but some people, they're like poetic in their tasting notes. Like when Martin was on our show, I was like, oh my God, Martin, like, yes, I want some apple pie, like with the crusty pie notes. But when you're starting out, start at those broad categories, and then you can move further and further down. So I'm going to pull up our last slide. So get yourself a lovely wine aroma wheel. It will put them, thank you. It puts them into these great, like kind of broader categories. You can see it's like, okay, fruit is a broad category. Then I'm going to go, is it dried fruit? So that's another thing to think about when you're tasting things. And it will really help you understand your wine that you're drinking a little bit more. So if you're tasting something and it tastes like dried apples as opposed to a fresh apple, that might indicate the age of the wine, and like how much oxygen's gotten in and different things like that. So typically in red wines, you'll find dark fruit, red fruit, but in white wines, you'll find stone fruit, tree fruit, tropical fruit, melon, and citrus. So just be like thinking about, okay, so I'm just going to start at that category. And then I'm going to think, okay, what are some stone fruits? Peaches is a stone fruit, different things like that. You can get further and further down once you know, like once you take a little bit of time to think about it. I love that. Can we discuss the afterbirth of wine?
Do you know what that is in reference to?
Afterbirth of wine, if you like, Loganstone.
No, do you know what that's about? Have you seen that clip?
Yes, it was from an episode of, what was it?
The Office?
Yeah,
it was like, we were talking about that the other day, where he's like, this is a red. And you're like, okay, yeah, good job. There's some really good Office quotes about wine. And then I think he's calling it like he's trying to talk about the, like, what's it called? The aroma that kind of like.
The finish or, okay.
I think it's the finish, but also like yeah. And he calls it an afterbirth by accident. Or, I mean, he didn't.
Yeah, like how he sees it. Well, yeah. So like Caitlin was saying, you can't identify something that you've never smelled before. You also can't identify something that you're not trying to identify. It becomes harder and harder, but it becomes easier and easier as you like start doing it more and more. So just start thinking about it. Start in those broad categories, move further and further down. I do think like petrol is something that was on there, and that is like something that you smell often in Riesling. Or in Riesling. So yeah, I know. Whoa, a diesel taste? Yes, Riesling. Look for a good Riesling. Find some diesel. Yeah. Okay, Caitlin. So now that we've talked about it, tell me what you want to. Do we want to start with like what you want to dance to, or what you want to listen to with this, or
I'll tell you what I want to eat.
Okay, start with that.
So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking like, first of all, it's an orange wine, which for me will go with lots of different things.
Everything. My God.
Yeah, kind of like everything. And I remember this cheese that I got at this shop in Petaluma, and I've been trying to track it down ever since. And it was like, I mean, not to be too like whatever about this episode being floral, but basically I want to eat cheese with like edible flowers. Do you ever have edible flowers? Like some goat cheese with some edible flowers and maybe some honey from like certain different bees from different parts of the world that give different tasting notes. I once went to a honey tasting. That was pretty cool too. So ooh, yeah.
That's cool.
And it's crazy because basically all it is honey that's from a bunch of different, like harvested from different types of flowers and plants. And it looks different. It tastes different. And I was like, man, I just think like, I want to go all in with the flower theme here. I'm here for it. I love it. Some good edible flowers.
Yes. Well, I feel like I said this one is not as floral as I hoped it would be. I'll be honest. Like not as floral as that Torontes that I had the other day.
Oh, Torontes.
Oh my God, that was just like exploding out of my glass. Which is so funny because I don't love floral wines because I'm kind of like, I want to smell my flowers. Like floral wines, I like smelling and I don't love drinking, which this one I actually like drinking because it's not as floral as they usually are. But yeah, I'm like feeling that honey and maybe like a spring salad or something. This feels like it's a little bit too like fresh for this cold. Like it's cooling down here. I'm kind of cold right now, and I'm like I wouldn't mind having like a little bit of a warmer one. I'm like maybe I should have done a floral red wine, but I'm really liking it. Oh my gosh. And it even has flowers on the back side of it. It's great.
I think I saw that at one point. Yeah.
No, maybe it's mushrooms. I really can't tell what's on the back side of this.
Flowers.
Yeah. But mine has kind of like a honeysuckle and like a green tea quality to it. So I kind of want to keep with that freshness. So I think like a fresh green salad would be really great with it, with maybe some honeyed ham or something, like get that honey a little. So
that sounds delicious.
Okay, so now that I know what you want to eat with it, what do you want to drink with it? I'm just joking. What do you want to do with it?
I was like, wait. That's one of our new hashtags. What do you want to drink?
Hashtag, what do you want to drink with what you're drinking? Or hashtag, what do you want to drink with your wine?
Yeah.
With your wine.
So I picked a song for today. It was actually kind of funny because I really loved the song, but it's pretty heavy hitting. It is like your Torontos from the other week because it is the Rah Rah Riot song. The song is called Flowers, and it's from their album called Super Bloom. And okay, can I just say before we play it, it is like the perfect blend of like flowers and quarantine because I don't know, the lyrics are like basically about like I'm over here baking bread and I'm still in a rental.
Like my life basically.
So it's really good though. I liked it. So hopefully we can pull it up and play it for a second. It's pretty fun and relaxing and moody. Let's see if it works.
If it doesn't,
hey, Sasha Slim, do you know who you're voting
Oh,
for?
there's an ad. I don't know why.
How is there an ad? Like, I don't know that could happen.
I did all my work. I set it at the right time. It was like 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
I wonder if mine's going to have an ad too then.
I don't know, but I'm not feeling the ad vibe, but I was definitely feeling the floral vibe.
Or slash ballot.
Well, nope. They're telling you to vote.
Don't ad. But also vote. That is important. I'm really good.
In Southern California, when the sun shines, if it don't shine for you, now I'm making bread again, still living in a rental. You're in our old house, and it makes me sentimental.
It says like
there was nothing about florals in it.
Oh, well, there's like something about like flowers in your hair at some point. But then I like it because he's like, when I think of Southern California, something about like I wonder if the sun comes out for ya. Like it's like, and I was like, you know what? I'm in Southern California. I got flowers. I got a super bloom. I got bacon bread.
Yes, like it's got it all.
It is.
It has baking bread. It has that you're still in a rental, as am I.
Yeah, it has it all.
Okay.
So.
Well, I went a little cheesier than you. And maybe I hope that all of our viewers at home will sing along with it. But it's a really good one. It's about flowers. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you haven't. But let's check it out. Hopefully there's no ad.
Did you know that when it snows, my eyes become alive and the light that you shine can't be seen? To a kiss from a rose on the grave. Again, I feel strange how it feels, yeah.
Now that your rose is in bloom.
I feel like you should just sing your song every time. It's like
next time I'll do it rather than, but Kissed by a Rose on the Grave. I mean,
that's good. That's a good one.
I feel like it describes Nebbiolo a little bit more because, like, if I'm thinking about grave, because Nebbiolo can age so well, and Nebbiolo is always described as tar and roses, so it's like Kissed by a Rose on the Grave. And I mean, that's what I want to drink for my last meal, maybe.
Wait. That's not part of your fuck, marry, kill though, huh?
Okay, really quick. Fuck, marry, kill. Primary, secondary, tertiary. Ready, set, go.
That's hard.
Well, I know. It's not supposed to be easy. I hope you can't easily just kill anyone.
Leather.
No. Well, that's great, but I meant
Oh,
like,
wait, I have to pick
okay,
one.
are you marrying primary? Are you
Okay.
killing secondary? Are you fucking
Okay.
tertiary? Like,
I'm fucking peaches.
no, don't give me the actual notes.
What?
I want to know the categories. Okay, you know what is in a primary note.
No.
You know what's in a secondary note, and you know what's in tertiary. So which one of those are you fucking? Which one are you marrying? And which one are you killing?
Okay, I think I'm. Oh my gosh, this is a really hard one. You already. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm fucking the fermentation. A tertiary.
Secondary. You're fucking secondary.
Mary. Oh wait, no, I have to kill one. I think I'm killing. Killing secondary. I'm fucking the tertiary, and I'm marrying primary.
Oh,
Because I want that like authenticity, you know.
okay. I like what you're saying. I'm a little different. I think that I'm like you. I'm killing secondary. I love secondary, like yeast. Oh God, I love it. I can't believe I'm killing it, but I'm gonna kill it. I am fucking primary because like I'm young and fresh, and I'm marrying tertiary because they're gonna age with me. It's like, ooh, you get a little more interesting as you get older. So those are mine.
I just get like a little bit of the interesting from the older, but I can still like have the young and fresh forever.
All right. Oh yeah, maybe that's better. Like as I get older, they're still staying young. But no, I'm just fucking him. I'm not marrying him.
Oh yeah, because you flip. Okay. I thought you were asking me aromas, and I was like,
no. I mean, I do kind of love that you went there, but I was just like, okay. Well, that's it. What are we doing next week?
Okay, so next week we are doing a special spooky Halloween episode.
Oh, Halloween wine. It's
Yes.
like bring whatever you want. Like
Yes.
maybe there's a bottle that you're afraid to drink because you're like, oh, that's been in there for a long time.
Yes, do that. That's a great idea.
I wish that I had one of your bottles that have been in your fridge forever.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. We'll open a bottle that you're afraid to open because it's different or new or because you've had it forever and you're like, ugh, this might be dank. Open that bottle. Or bring whatever you want. It's basically a BYOB. I actually think I'm going to bring a bottle that I'm afraid to open. I am so excited. We are going to be talking to you about
Why are you afraid to open it?
Probably mostly because they were aged too long or I don't know the quality from the beginning.
Sometimes I have bottles that I'm afraid to open because I'm like, oh, is this the right occasion?
Well, that's a good reason too. Like I never have the right occasion for them and then I hold on to them for too long.
And then you're like, oh no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So open up a bottle you're afraid to open. So like think about that.
Ooh, yeah. Or you're afraid to try. Open that bottle that you're like, I don't know if that's for me. But it's about this being spooky and being experimental. And we have
some fun stories to tell you, some fun Halloween spookiness. I'm probably going to dress up if I have time to make a costume in this brief time. And I hope Caitlin's going to dress up too.
We're so excited.
Follow us on our Instagram, _taste_wine. There it was, flashing at you. _taste_wine. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
I will say, if you're here tonight, we appreciate you. We understand what you sacrificed to be here by skipping.
Oh my God, it means so much to us. Like
we're gonna watch them later ourselves, so we can be a good civic servant, or I don't know, civically engaged. Maybe is a better way of saying that. But also, vote. Vote early, vote often. See, I just told Logan, I was like, I keep wanting to say vote. Everyone says vote early, and I keep wanting to say vote early, vote often. And I'm like, where is that coming from? Don't vote often. Just vote.
Well, vote often, as in you should vote in every election that you fucking can. Don't wait every 4 years. Vote as often as you can. Okay.
Every few years, yes, and maybe not like right now, but definitely.
Yeah. Actually, I was listening to this pod, friend of the pod, that talked about how a really large percentage of ballots have been thrown out of the early ballots, which I'm like, that's actually why I'm voting in person, which is kind of like a big deal for me, because it's like a much higher percentage chance that your vote's going to count. But then they were saying, but like 80 to 90% of all the ballots that were being thrown out were duplicate ballots. So people are voting often when they should.
You know what? Folks are doing their job in that case, and that's what they're there for.
Oh, yeah.
Those duplicate ballots. So, all right. So we love you. Vote. Tune in next week for our spooky episode, and we can't wait to see you.
Yes.
As always,
stay thirsty.
Stay thirsty. My glass is empty, so I'm going to use my bottle.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Woo! Dun, dun, down, 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 down.
We got to tell our producer to stop getting drunk on our episode.
Dang, Lauren. There we go. Oh, no. Buzzer episode. There we go.
Now I can really drop my moves. My weird ass dance.
I know. I'm like, I feel like you're doing an exercise video.
I'm like, this is all my cardio for the day is lifting up.
Bye, guys. See you next week.